Oh man, the start of a new generation is always exciting. Hey guys, this is Gamer Cow. Welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game History video. This time we're on to the Sun and Moon base set. And, well, this is where I'd stopped playing for quite a while, mostly for financial reasons. Like saying, even on PTCGO, trying to get, like, pack codes and stuff, wasn't easy. The trade system was really annoying to sort of deal with there too. If there's one thing that Live is probably better for, it's playing relatively free to play, because no more trading stuff. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of cards in this set, but this is where feature creep, I suppose, starts coming in. It's where all the big bloat happens. We've had some secret rare stuff in the past, but the ugliest rarity to ever exist comes in here in Rainbow Rares. These are absolutely grotesque, and they look even worse when you don't have the holofoil effect on them. I'm sure they're, like, at least passable IRL, but I know most people hate them that way as well. So this continues until Generation 9, and it seems like, thankfully, they are finally gone. But yeah, don't expect us to ever play any of these. Don't expect at least me and Sai to play any of these either. I don't know what Pepper's take is on them, but the full arts here are the most boring things I have ever seen. Just like a solid background color with, like, you know, the blue border at least is different from the yellow that we've been dealing with. I think it looks at least a bit better. But, like, these are so boring. But when you look at the regular arts for these things, they're so cool. It's like these are already full arts, right? So what do we need these other... I mean, I know why we need them, in a way, but, like, what do we need these other rarities for? It's like, at least these, when you look at it, it's okay, you know, extra chances to get the card, sure, but like, why? These are so good already. I don't know. This is the generation that truly introduces the gold rares for a lot of its items too, because we'll get those within the same set that they came out. So like prominent cards. Okay, Rotom Dex is not a prominent card, but we'll get there. Nest Ball is absolutely a prominent card that even if it doesn't see play immediately that much, it's like, yeah, that sort of thing is going to get gold rares as well. So the max rarity players are starting to eat pretty here. One sec. Throat is deciding not to cooperate too much today. That's okay. We also have a bunch of promos, and most of these are like gym stuff. The gym badge is a promo. You get this over a bunch of leagues and stuff like that, and you know, different ones for different parts of the season, I suppose. They're not very good cards, but they just look kind of neat, I suppose, like, even if they are using the evolutions thingy for it. So, you know, we'll show them off anyway. We do get a Pikachu from the league stuff as well, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's only got 50 HP, so it's not surviving its charge attack. But this kind of one has actually been, like, it's a reprint of the old promo Pikachu from Gen 1. And that was actually, like, the best Pikachu that you could use for a fair while. Mostly because Gen 1 didn't have, like, acceleration-based stuff very easily. But, you know, it was still pretty neat. There is the Mega Camera Up to Mega Sharpedo. The final holdouts from our Gen 6 promos are here. They're not super good, but like Mega Sharpedo's Torpedo Dive is pretty strong. Being able to do bench damage to each of the opponents as well is kind of neat. Doesn't have a retreat cost too, which is nice. So like, that's okay. Mega Camera Up's not nearly as good, although both parts are Heavy Ball searchable, so there is that. Discard the top 3 of each player's deck and do 40 more, 120 plus 40 for each energy discarded. Sounds cool. We don't have Blacksmith though. So, like, this is kind of dead in the water, to be honest. They do get Spirit Links, which is neat, and that's a thing. Not everything gets Spirit Links. There aren't as many promos in Gen 7 that are, like, brand new, per se, but there is a few, there's a few times where stuff comes out a little bit earlier as a promo, and this Lycanroc GX is actually one of them. The full art for this, I think, comes out in Burning Shadows, or, like, somewhere around there. But the original printing was as a promo card. And yeah, it's a 200 HP Stage 1 GX, so this confirms that we are in evolution territory at this point. There's a bit of a story there as well, but we'll get to that in a sec. Yeah, so GXs, unlike EXs, will be evolutions as well. And so yeah, 200 HP, stage 1. Crunches are pretty solid. This actually did see play because of that alone. Discard an energy automatically and 30 damage. There was a energy denial sort of disruption deck that got played with this. Accelerock doesn't do a ton of damage, but it does do enough when you've got fighting type support behind it. And Lycanfang GX, your 1 per game thing, discards 2 energy from this Pokemon, does 200 damage. That's solid enough. We've seen this before in like G-Booster and such. So yeah, it's fine. Not the strongest card out there, but the energy disruption can be kind of neat. So one of the main things that came out with this set when Worlds was like revealing stuff from this set, it was mostly just the Lunala and Solgaleo that got revealed. It was only a partial reveal, because this was before Sun and Moon actually released as games, and they didn't want to spoil the fact that Lunala and Solgaleo were actually evolutions. This was the first time that, like, legendaries were actually full-on evolutions. You could argue Manaphy, but, like, Manaphy was a basic beforehand, and it, like, you could breed it, was, like, super weird. Fiona doesn't even evolve into Manaphy, so it's not really an evolution. But, yeah, this was the first time that we had, Cosmog, and something like that. So Cosmog evolving into Cosmo, and evolving into the cover legends. They revealed all the attacks and stuff like that, and people genuinely were terrified for this because they thought these were basics, and that would have been a ridiculous amount of power creep to come into the game. But thankfully that is not the case, and they are actually, unfortunately, Solgaleo is actually kind of decent. We'll get to that in a bit, but unfortunately these are not like super playable because of the stage 2 tag on them. They just don't do enough for that, but it did prove in the end, once we finally got the stuff here, that, we were getting evolution stuff for this. The reason it was important to keep it secret, by the way, is because this set came out the February after Sun and Moon released. There was still, there was a lot of stuff that Sun and Moon didn't actually show us until after it released. And so, yeah, over 3 months later is when this set came out. So it was kind of important to have that sort of distinction. There is an awful lot to go over in this set, so let's just try and speed through the trainers and stuff here. We'll do our best. There's some new stuff like Big Malasada, I guess, is kind of funny. Heal 20, remove a special condition. Not super good, but whatever. We get some good reprints in here as well. Energy Retrieval and Energy Switch. Experience Share, Great Ball. These all get new artworks for the new generation. We have our Draw Free in how he's terrible, nobody cares. Illimer is also pretty bad. Each player shuffles the hand into the deck, flips a coin. If heads, you draw 6. If tails, you draw 3. It's not great, to be totally honest with you. It's too luck reliant, and we have Judge and N in the format, so why would we ever need this? Lily is pretty good, although maybe not immediately. You draw until you have 6 cards in your hand, which is okay. Yeah, it's pretty solid enough effect. We've seen this before. It does see occasional play, not the most, but we're in an item heavy format. We could easily draw 5 or 6 off of this in reasonable hand states. But if it's your first turn, you draw until you have 8 in hand instead. This doesn't really see the most amount of play until 2019 format, when we actually do rotate N and the likes. But when it does see play, it's like this, and later on Cynthia are like the 2 big supporters that we have. We don't have research, we don't have like Sycamore and that sort of thing, and it actually was really good. So I think there could be some space to experiment with it even now. This effect is not terrible, and if you are playing like a lower to the ground sort of item focused deck, you could probably do a lot with this. Nest Ball is the new ball search that comes out here. This got reprinted in Scarlet and Violet too, so they clearly wanted this back in format instead of like Quick Ball or something. Search your deck for a basic, bench it. It's a reprint of Great Ball from Gen 4, because Great Ball got retooled into Master Ball from Gen 3 and like below. So funny how these things get like respect. But yeah, it just automatically benches the thing. It means you can't use it for stuff like Shaman, but everything else you can. And this is just like costless search for a basic. It's super, super good. Poison Barb is a new tool that doesn't alter poison Pokemon's damage because they don't exist in the TCG. It makes it so that if the opponent damages you whilst you're active, they get poisoned. So just a little bit of damage mod. It's a very funky damage mod. It's certainly not Bustle Band, but you know, it's still pretty neat. Pokeball, Catcher, Potion, they all get reprints here. Professor Kukui basically outclasses Giovanni's scheme at this point. You draw 2 cards and do 20 more damage in the turn. This is actually a pretty good tech supporter, especially with Beer Seeker still in the format for now. Yeah, super cool card, but even outside of that, it does, I think, see some play later on too. Because that plus 20 can make a huge difference. And yeah, one of the first times for a while though, like, we're not getting a research print, right? This is the only professor, I think, in like modern day stuff, like since Juniper was a thing, this is the only professor that doesn't have a draw 7, like discard draw 7 on this thing. I wonder if we'll ever get a Kukui Professor's Research actually, because we just haven't yet. It's kind of weird. Rare Candy gets probably my favorite print of the card. It just looks awesome. Repel is a new card here that forces the opponent to switch. It's Pokemon Circulator, I think it was called in the past, where yeah, it was the Heart Gold Soul Silver card that just forced the opponent to switch. They get to choose, obviously, but sometimes you just really don't want to hit what they have active because it's like a Bursting Balloon or something on there, and you don't have the Lysander, or you don't like care what they bring in because you're gonna KO it anyway. So I guess there are some uses, but nah, not super great. Rotom Dex reshuffles your prizes. You shuffle them back into the deck and then put new prizes down based on how many you had. If you know that you've got something really bad in the prizes, that could be kind of neat. You get to reshuffle them, I guess, if Town Map could be used with this, because it doesn't have to shuffle face down prizes, it just shuffles all of them. So, like, you could Town Map, you could see, oh, I've got, like, 3 Ultra Balls in my prizes, and I really need those. I'm going to Rotom Dex them back into the deck, or something. I don't know. It's not great, but you could use it, I suppose. Team Skullgrunt is very annoying, actually, for these energy disruption type stuff, because it's like, I'm going to keep the energy in hand until I really need it then, because you'll keep on discarding them. And then the opponent flips this and goes like, your hand is now mine, and discard 2 energy from it. It's like, God, why? There's actually a Pokemon in this set that synergizes with this as well, so you can do some control stuff with this. It's very irritating, but, you know, such is the way. It does have a very cool full art though, like, look at this. Awesome stuff there. Timer Ball, this is the only printing that Timer Ball ever gets according to the search tile. I'm like, what the heck? I thought this card got printed several times, but it's just in format for a long time, I suppose, because Sun and Moon base is here for a while. Flip 2 coins. For each head, search your deck for an evolution. Put it into hand. It's dual ball for evolutions, and I kind of wish this was still in format, actually, because I think this, I mean, maybe Lugia would be too strong with it, I don't know, but I think it'd be pretty cool. Just because it's like, we don't have good evolution search in current standard, right? But this is neat. I hate it, because I always flip 2 tails on this thing, but it is neat, and it definitely sees a lot of play as we go forward as well. Ultra Ball gets a reprint, DC, and Rainbow Energy, you get reprints here as well. This is the artwork I've been using for Rainbow, actually, because it just looks awesome. So, yeah. On to the Pokemon, because there are a lot that are worth talking about in here. We do get a Butterfree, but unfortunately it's not very good, so Adaptive Evolution still isn't going to see play here. The first one to really talk about here is Decidueye GX, because man, this card was hype when it came out, and it is very powerful for a very, very long time. 240 HP Stage 2. Let's just get that out of the way first. HP numbers have gone up a lot from here. Stage 2 GXs are looking at 240 to 250 HP as the main bit. You do get some which are a bit lower than that, but yeah, 240 HP is on the low end for this set, but yeah, right smack dab in the middle. Crazy amount of HP to deal with. 240 is very difficult to deal with in like any circumstance really, but it is a stage 2, so evolving from these, they're single prizes, but evolving from these low HP Pokemon, that's something which can kind of trip the deck up at times compared to faster basic base decks. But it's got very cool sets of stuff here. Like Razor Leaf, nothing special, right? Grass double colors to do 90, whatever, but it's complemented by Feather Arrow. Once during your turn, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. This is a soft once per turn, so Decidueyes will stack, and you can put damage counters wherever you want if you've got multiple in play. Of course, we have Forested Giant Plants at the moment, so we can get a bunch of these out, and it's going to be very nice. And sometimes you just don't even attack, and you just use these as your thing. It's great. The GX attack is also incredibly good here, though. It's one of the best ones for a long time. Hollow Hunt GX for a single grass energy puts 3 cards from your discard pile into your hand. Just straight up, it doesn't matter what they are, just any 3 cards from your discard pile back into the hand. DCE, sure. Supporter for next turn, sure. Pokemon that you need, yeah, why not? Just put them into the hand. What's the worst that can happen? Yeah, you might get End again, but then there are resources that you have still to do whatever you want. Puzzle of Time is already really, really good, and we saw that with Pepper's game against Sai, right? With a double puzzle. We've seen this a couple of times with like Night March, and then like the Gyarados stuff was really good with it. This attack is ridiculous. So yeah, it's amazingly strong. So there's not much else to say. This gets played a lot. We've actually noticed this was like the #1 deck that was played in both international championships that was in this format. 35% I think it got up to in top 32 with this and Vileplume, as you would expect. Like, you know, grass type, forest giant plants, it's gonna play that sort of bit, and it really benefits from slowing the game down with item lock as well. So. But this sees play forever, right? Not quite, but it sees play for a very, very long time. We've got this with Ninetales in the next set. We've got Zoroark that ends up being super good with it. And there's a lot of... Even now, there's a fair few variants for it. It's just, yeah, the Vileplume deck is by far the strongest one. At least the most represented. So, yeah. Super skill-intensive card, too. I'm definitely playing it. I just need to work out how I'm doing it, because I don't know if I want to play Vileplume, but we probably will, let's be honest. Lurantis was something that was hyped up a lot when we saw the preview stuff for it, because it looks absolutely insane and never quite lived up to that hype, unfortunately. 210 HP stage 1, so a little bit bulkier than that Lycanroc, and it's got a couple of decent attacks to it. Flower Supply is the main one that we were looking at here. For 1 grass, it only does 40, but it attaches 2 basic energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way that you like. We have just come off of a format where Manectric, you know, Mega Manectric was insane. And you're telling me we can do Mega Manectric for that, but better for 1 energy? Yeah, the damage output's not there, and that's probably one of the big problems, but it's like, we get to attach to 2 different Pokemon as well. Mega Manectric could only attach to 1 thing, I'm pretty sure. So that's like, yeah, this is crazy good. Solar Blade is fine. 2 grass and the colorless to do 120, heal 30 from this thing. It's passable enough. And then Chloroscyph is your once per game GX. 50 damage times the number of grass energy attached to this Pokemon. So yeah, you can start at 1 if you really need to, but you're not Chloroscyphing for 1, obviously. It's fine. But the problem is, I think that it just doesn't do enough damage. And it's like, okay, you can accelerate a bunch of energy, but you really need something good to accelerate that energy too. And I don't think we ever quite got there. There is a Lurantis in the next set that will boost the damage of this thing, but then you've like split Evo line. That's probably fine. It's like you get a couple of those once in play, and then this does a fair bit more. That's respectable enough, but it might be difficult to keep enough actual attackers in play at that point. And yeah, I don't know. There's probably something for it. It's just, it is weak to fire as well, which is a big problem because Volcanion was also an international championship winner at this sort of time. So yeah, it's maybe not in the right format, but it's certainly strong. So there is that. Shinotic was something that people would consider playing with it as well. Once during your turn before you attack, may search your deck for a grass Pokemon, just put it into the hand. We've had this before in terms of, I think it wasn't Grovyle, it was Sunshine Grace with Sunflora. That ended up not being necessary for the Jumpluff deck at the time. With Forest of Giant Plants, I'm sure you could probably make something work out of this. Ton of Ball Search, you could just get all the stuff in play. Maybe you could build a Decidueye build with this, it's just probably not the best one to do. So, yeah. I don't know. Good card, I just don't know if it's going to see play. Serena is not amazing. If you evolve into it, then you can have the opponent reveal their hand, and you get to choose a card to discard from it. That's really nasty, but it doesn't do anything beyond that. And also, then how are you, like, we've lost AZ, and Acerola doesn't exist yet, and even if it did, damage counter thing. Yeah, it's tough, because it's just like, how do you repeat this? You could use Devolution Spray, that's like the one way at the moment. We don't even have Super Scoop Up right now, so repeating it is not really happening, and if you're not repeating it, you're probably not doing enough with this thing. Delinquent is in format and ridiculously good compared to this. This is a stage 2 that requires Forest and doesn't do anything beyond a discard. Just seems bad. Arcanine does a ton of damage. That's the one thing we'll give it here. I'm not like super keen on this card, apart from the artwork is gorgeous. Look at that. But the card itself, 190 damage for free fire in the colors. You do have to discard free fire, but more importantly, this reintroduces burn as a concept, and that is something we somehow did not have in all of Gen 6. Burn is a little bit different now, because this is the one change for Generation 7, really. For Burn, now, it automatically does the 20 damage first, and you flip to see if the burn gets removed. As opposed to before, the burn was permanent, but you flip to see if you take the damage. So if you got super lucky, you would just never take any damage from burn, which was very annoying for decks that were like, I'm 10 damage short, I have an auto burn on my thing, let's see if we get it. That's just not a problem anymore. Moving on to Incineroar. I'm not going to go over the non-GX versions of these, by the way, because they're all terrible, unfortunately. Incineroar GX has 250 HP, which is absolutely gigantic. And it's got a pretty efficient attack. I did try and build the deck with this. It's probably not strong enough, just because I don't think the damage is quite there. But for 1 fire energy, Hustling Strike does 10, plus 20 for each of your benched fire Pokemon. It's very similar to the Charizard that I played all the way back in Arceus, where that was on an ability, admittedly, but that did extra damage for your bench fire Pokemon, and Fire Wing started at like 30, so it was doing 80 for 1, which was pretty respectable. It's like 2-shot numbers at that sort of time. This is also somewhat similar, but without Skyfield, and it caps at 110. And we're also sort of looking that, at least at the moment, there aren't really very many fire types that you would play with this. We've got Volcanion, like the baby one, but the Volcanion EX doesn't boost this damage because it's an evolution, so you can't really play that one. And then we've got nothing else really. Coming out, there's like maybe Turtonator you could use, or maybe Ho-Oh at the end of the format, but there's just not a lot in the short term that actually makes this playable. And by the time it would be playable, it's probably power crept, because we don't have Skyfield. So, yeah, I don't know. Tiger Swing's not a very good attack, like 80 plus 50 for each heads out of 2 coins, but it takes free energy to do that, and it's not double colors compatible. Neither is its GX attack, but 200 plus auto burn, 220 damage functionally is going to be enough to KO the vast majority of things. Everything that isn't a stage 2 GX is pretty much dying to that. There are even Fury Belted stuff. It's like you need a Fury Belted Zygarde to survive that from full HP with 10 left. Yeah, it's not really happening. So yeah, it's neat. Does a lot of damage to 1 energy. You could max potion with the stuff there, and it makes it pretty cool. But it does take a specific setup to get that damage too. If you play a single Shaman, then you're down to 90 damage for 1, and that's just nowhere near enough. So I think it's too... There's no draw engine in Fire either, so I don't think there's a place for it. But it is almost there. I might look up some YouTube stuff and see. I think Omnipot probably made a video on it, so we'll see about that. Unfortunately, most of the stuff that's worth talking about is GX things here, because stuff like the Poliwrath really doesn't do anything. So we're going to just move straight on to the Lapras over here. There is a deck for this right now. There's a better, or at least a more fun version of it in the next set with Aqua Patch coming in. but it's okay to talk about now. 190 HP GX, it's weak to grass, not metal, so it's taking the water typing, not the ice typing for a change. And a couple of decent attacks. Collect is just a straightforward 1 water, draw 3 cards. Not normally the sort of attack you would see played, but at this current time, because of its second attack's cost, it is actually the primary focus of the deck and it plays a control style instead. For triple water energy, Blizzard Burn does 160 and you can't attack with it next turn. We've seen that attack on Kieran before, so yeah, sure. It's fine. Decent enough thing with it. But then Ice Beam GX is its once per game thing. 2 water and a colorless for some reason to do 100 and auto paralysis. It doesn't do as much outright damage, but you can use it in consecutive... Well, I mean, you can't use this in consecutive turns, but you can attack next turn as well, so you can go Ice Beam GX into Blizzard Burn. But also just the auto paralysis can buy a turn, and that's the main bit with it. We're actually going to see this kind of thing, maybe not exactly like this, but we're going to see this sort of buy a turn GX attack actually be relevant in the future as well. So don't discount it. It's not a lot of damage outright, but I suppose if you put a Fury Belt down, you could maybe, you know, like 110 sort of chip up to something that you need. But Ice Beam plus Blizzard Burn is already 260, so I don't know what you'd really need to get to at that point. It's okay. It gets a lot better when we have acceleration for it. Moving on down, there's Primarina GX as well, which is fine, but it's too difficult to build up damage for right now. Chunky, 250 HP, I love the artwork on this thing too. Primarina is my favorite starter from this generation, so bit of a shame that it's probably the worst one here. Bubble Beat is kind of an attack we've seen before though. For a double colorless, it does 10 plus 20 for each water energy attached to all of your Pokemon. So it's Darkrai, but as a massive stage 2, does technically less damage, which is weird, but I suppose water has a bit more going for it here. We technically still have like Archie's Ace in the Hole in format, so there could be a way that you could accelerate this into play as well if you really wanted to. Roaring Seas is too expensive. It is an auto energy discard, but 3 water in the colorless and only 120 damage, not a chance. Grand Echo is pretty solid though. For double colorless, it fully heals all of your Pokemon. We are going to see this GX attack come in quite a lot in other cards as well, and it ends up being a lot better on them because of various reasons, whether they're basics or it actually does technically something else as well. It's a decent attack, for sure. Full healing everything, especially when your deck is like this bulky. It's good. Just not at the moment, and not on this guy, because, yeah, even with Arco Patch, we wouldn't have enough like acceleration to make this work. So unfortunately, hard pass on this one. But maybe, I mean, there's strictly speaking, there's like Palkia and stuff you could use. There's probably some way that you could make this work, but it's just not good enough. So not really worth it too much. Oh, Primarina Lurantis, let's go. New deck on the fly. Araquanid is very interesting. It's a water type that is immune to damage from fire Pokemon. So it's specifically there as an out to Volcanion. So I don't know if Volcanion does currently play Hexmaniac, but if they don't, they automatically lose to this card. So maybe they need to from here. I'll have to double check the lists. Doesn't really do a ton of damage. It's meant as a complete counter card sort of thing, and that's what it is. So yeah, no damage in fire types. Not the only time we're going to see this moving forward as well. Pyukumuku, I've been told, was kind of funny because it's if you KO this from the active by damage, you take 6 damage counters. So you play this with like Bursting Balloon, take 12 damage counters. Very funny. Don't know if it's any good though. But apparently it was played a little bit, so I'll trust Pell on that one. Vikavolt is very neat, but not great this set because we don't have good partners for it. 150 HP stage 2. Once during your turn, before you attack, you may search your deck for a grass energy and a lightning energy. Attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you like. Yeah, this is not the only time that we're going to see this, but it is the first time that we see this like dual energy thing going on. And my god, it's like it's strong. It says it in the name, right? Strong charge. It's pretty great. Vikabulu was the main deck that played this, but that doesn't come out for a couple of sets. Next set, there's Tapu Koko GX that we could probably use with this, and that'd be kind of neat. There's also a Vikavolt GX that comes out next set. So this is a good archetype to look into for a couple of sets time, but for now, yeah, not a ton of partners that make it work, because most of the stuff that wants lightning energy doesn't really want grass energy, and if you're only using this to accelerate one energy, then it's kind of worthless, because we've had this sort of thing in format before, and it doesn't really work. The only reason Delphox kind of worked is because Delphox had Blacksmith and Draw Power and, you know, everything else basically. If the Charger Bug was grass type, maybe you could justify it as a single energy thing, because the Grubbin, because Grubbin's not part electric, it's always grass type, and Forest Giant Plants would make it work, but we just don't have that, so whatever. Crobat's in format, it's terrible, I just want to note it because now we could play Crobat Break if we wanted to, but that's also terrible without the other Crobat, so whatever. Alola Muck is very irritating, but I mean, it's one of those things that's, like, I guess it's fine. Silent Lab on a Pokemon, basically. The Grimer itself also has a free energy retreat, so they're both Heavy Ball, Search Ball. Basically, every basic Pokemon in play, in the hand and in the discard pile, has no abilities. So, it's not quite Garbodor, because Garbodor shuts off everything if you've got a tool on it, but it is selectively shutting off like Shaymins, or later on Tapu Lele, or like Marshadow, that sort of thing. So there's some good use for it, for sure. There's a lot of strong basic abilities, and if your deck doesn't use them, then this is a good tech to consider. That's the main bit for it. If you are using a lot of basic abilities, though, obviously don't play this card, but look out for it, I guess, as well. The evolutions do get a couple of Pokemon in here. We don't get the main ones until much later into the generation, but I do want to note them because Eevee is actually an energy evolution Pokemon in this stage. It is a 2 retreat cost, which is very annoying, but at 60 HP, we get this reprint here, so you attach your basic energy from the hand to it, search your deck for a Pokemon of that type that evolves from Eevee, put it onto the Eevee. That massively speeds up the use of Espeon and Umbreon here, and that makes them surprisingly good. They don't look that good on the surface, but because you can immediately get into them, works out a ton better. Espeon, 200 HP Psychic type, for 1 Psychic Energy, 30 plus Auto Confuse on Psybeam, really good. Psychic for Psychic Double Colors does 60 plus 30 for each of the opponent's energy. So, like, this is so much better than a Mewtwo as well. It's kind of fun. But it does take a third energy, so there is that. But 60 plus 30 is really good. That's suddenly hitting 90 damage if the opponent's just got 1 energy on them. Most of the time they're going to have at least 2, probably 3 if they're using normal attacks. So that gets up to pretty respectable numbers without too much issue. And then its Divide GX attack is also pretty good. For the same Psychic Double Colors cost, you put 10 damage counters on the opponent's Pokemon in any way that you like. Yeah, I mean, you can sort of see nowadays with Sableye how much of a power creep that can be with stuff, but there's also a big stipulation on that. Just being able to put 10 damage counters down, you can spread stuff out as you need to knock things out on the bench. Really cool. If you've already gotten a damage counter on, say, a Shaymin, you could just knock that out as well. You could focus on one thing. And yeah, super strong. Really do like this card. It's used quite a lot in the format because of its ease of use, but also Espeon, like Garbodor next set, is going to be really powerful. There's like Dramper that you can use it with. Tauros could be used with it just now. And yeah, just being able to evolve into it immediately. It's a big amount of pressure to put on the start of the game. I didn't really talk about the Lunala when we looked at it before. Its Psychic Transfer is the same ability as like Leaf Trans and stuff like that, or Energy Trans from the original Venusaur. So often as you like during your turn, you may move Psychic Energy from one of your Pokemon to another one. It's Aromatisse, I guess, on the stage 2, but for Psychic. Psychic has never had this ability before, though, so that's kind of neat. Also, 250 HP. It's weak to Dark instead of Psychic, because it's using the Ghost typing from Lunala, so that's kind of neat. Also, fighting resistance as a result. Unfortunately, that's roughly where the good stuff ends. Like, Luna 4 GX is actually really good. We can mention that first. Knock out one of the opponent's basic non-GX Pokemon. The non-GX stipulation is incredibly annoying actually, because the further we go on, the more, like, the less EXs get played, so the less, like, shots you have to KO some stuff that way. So that gets really annoying later on. But it's still an auto KO, especially if the opponent plays Shaman for now. That's just something you can KO from the bench. You don't even have to worry about it being active. Pretty great. Moongeist Beam is too expensive though. 120 for 4 Psychic Energy. Hello? What year are we in? The defending Pokemon can't be healed during the opponent's next turn. So it's a technically disruption. It's nowhere near enough good disruption for that though. Like, no, it's not an attacker in its own right, unfortunately. And that ability, while good, we have had this ability in format for a while. In terms of gold upbreak, it's nowhere near strong enough to justify. On to Persimmon, because this card's actually really good too. Again, it's kind of unassuming, but it works out super well. 110 HP, only 1 retreat on this guy, which is really good, and 2 pretty solid attacks. Fling is a 30 snipe for 1 fighting energy. You don't tend to see this one very often because the deck doesn't usually play fighting energy, which sounds weird, but the way that it works out is that it was a double colorless focus deck. We had a bunch later on in the format. We get like other ways of getting double colorless as well, or 2 energy from that sort of thing. So we just use team play, which does 10 plus 30 for each of your bench Persimmon. Now the really cool thing we can do with this at the moment is copy it with Mew, because we have both Mew EX and it's a basic, so we have the Fates Collide Mew, and at that point we can have 4 Persimmon on the bench, copy it with Mew, do 130 damage with just 1 DCE. Very neat. Also, Fury Belt obviously works very well here, so we can get extra HP, stuff like that, and it's a strong attack for not a lot of energy. We just need more double colorlesses and make it work. This also pairs pretty well with stuff like Tapu Koko that we'll get later on, which can do a bunch of spread damage, and that weakens everything, so this can get KOs it needs to. Yeah, it's a cool card. Even with just using the Persimmon itself, that's 100 for double colorless on a fighting type, so pretty good. Moving on here, Raticate technically can search out a bunch of cards based on your bench Pokemon, but then you just get N, so nobody's going to care about that. Key thing to note though, you have to evolve from this Rattata in order to get to the Raticate. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet, Alolan Pokemon often have attacks that don't cost energy. So like the Rattata over here just does 20 for no energy whatsoever. Kinda cool. So we'll see that more as we go through the stuff. But like Alolan Persian here can also just attack with taunts, force the opponent to switch, doesn't take any energy to do so. Not a good card, but you know, some attacks actually do matter later on that way. On to Umbreon, 200 HP, once again, you can auto-evolve into this with the Eevee, and this one's actually really good to do that with, because Strafe is pretty solid to start off with here. 30 damage for a Dark Energy, you may switch this to the bench, pretty good. Shadow Bullet is basically just slightly cheaper Night Spear, 1 Dark and a double colorless to do 90 and 30 snipe. It's a bit outdated, but there's a couple of decks that back this up, like Decidueye is one I've seen this with, that you can back it up with the extra damage counters from there. That's pretty solid. It could also set up stuff like Yveltal Break if you want to as well. It's not the strongest attack out there, but it can do just about enough where it's like passable. And Dark Coral GX is a very weird one here. Discard 2 energy from the opponent's Pokemon. Supposedly, this is a very unintuitive way of thinking about it, and this like blew my mind last night because it works with retreating as well. You can select 1 energy, like 1 part of a multi-energy with this as one of its things. So it's like you can discard 2 Double Dragons with this, even though it says discard 2 energy, and you would think, oh, Double Dragon energy is 2 energy, so you only discard 1 of them. Nah, you can select 1 of the 2 parts of each Double Dragon energy, and you get to discard 2. Very stupid, but you know, discard 2 energy on the board is a pretty solid effect, so yeah, that's your once per game, disruptive when it needs to be. Speaking of disruptive, Alolan Dugtrio. I don't remember if this got played, but I feel like it kind of did. The opponent's active retreat is one more. I think when Field Blower comes in so we can get rid of Floatstone and stuff, you might actually be able to use this thing. It doesn't do much beyond that, which is a shame, but making the opponent pay more to retreat is often enough to disrupt a bunch of strategies, so yeah, it's there, alright. 100 HP though, so not levelable searchable, which is annoying. And also, speaking of disruptive, Skarmory discards all special energy in play for a double colorless, which is very irritating. Doesn't really do anything beyond that, once again, but it's like, that is super annoying. Yeah, it will discard its own DCE too, but pff, who cares about that, right? If you're able to discard 3 or 4 energy off the opponent's board, devastating. This sort of thing is worth noting because Ninja Boy is still pretty, is like in the format, it's pretty fun, right? So you could always Ninja Boy into this or Ninja Boy out of this, depending on the situation. So it's not like something you have to have in play every single time for it to function. So yeah, strong card. Solgaleo is it's a card, alright. Just look at this beast. 250 HP once again on the big side for the limit of the format. I mean, this is Wailord tier, right? Without actually being completely useless. So there is that. Ultra Road is a really good ability. Once during your turn before you attack, you may switch your active with one of your bench. I think we've just had this revealed on a Gengar at time of recording, actually, for modern stuff. Like, it's just been revealed for the next core set coming out. That's kind of cool. Like, the ability is really strong, and when it did see play, because I think this one did see a part play when the other Solgaleo GX, like the promo one, came out, I think, and the Ultra Road is super strong, so yeah, it's a really good ability, just hard to take advantage of right now because the rest of the card doesn't really fit the format. Sunsteel Strike does 230 damage for 3 energy. You can see why people were afraid of this thing when they thought it was a basic. 2 metal and the colors to do 230, discard all energy from this Pokemon. That is a killer right now because we lost Bronzong. If we had Bronzong, it would be clunky, but this would be absolutely the sort of deck I would try and play for it. Unfortunate. Soul Burst is supposed to try and rectify this. For 1 metal energy, your GX attack searches your deck for up to 5 energy cards and attaches them in any way that you like. Let me just reread that for a sec, just to show how utterly ridiculous this is. 1 energy, search your deck for 5 energy cards, not even basic energy. You can search all of your double colorless, all of your double dragon, whatever you want, attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you like. That is unbelievably powerful. Probably the strongest GX attack in this entire set. One of the strongest GX attacks, I would argue, for quite a long time. Like, Hollow Hunt is really good, but this is insane, right? Search your deck for 5 energy cards. Get them into... I can't understate how ridiculous that is. This is the sort of thing that you could potentially consider a 101 tech line into like another stage 2 deck that's playing candies or whatever, solely for the fact that you could accelerate 5 energy into play. And also have an auto switch every turn after that. The attack is still really good, it's just impossible to keep charged. But yeah, like, this card reads insane. And it's just, I think you could play this with Metagross actually next set in that sort of way, like as a 101 tech line. We'll have to see. Absolutely bonkers card though. And then we get to, unfortunately, fairies don't really get anything here. There's Rabombi that can heal 20 damage from one of your Pokemon. Whoop-de-frickin-do. There's a Dragonair that's a massive meme in here that I think Pablo Meza made a deck for in the next set. If you attack with Dragon's Wish, you get to attach any number of energy from your hand to your Pokemon as you like next turn. So, I mean, that's really powerful, right? But you've got to give up an attack. It's on the stage 1. We do have the Dragonite from Roaring Skies, I think it was, that lets you take an extra prize if it gets a KO. It took like 3 Grass, a Lightning, and a Colorless to do 150 damage. So, like, this would be a way of getting that going, but it's massive meme territory, let's just put it that way. And then finally the colors Pokemon, because there's surprisingly a heck of a lot of them in this set. Taurus GX is probably the most relevant one for at least the GXs. This 180 HP Mad Bull over here, it's pretty solid. It's all of its attacks are for double colorless, that's what makes it kind of good. It is a free energy retreat on this thing though, which is very expensive, so that's irritating. But its Horn Attack 60 for DC, yeah sure, I mean it KOs early stuff, so that's pretty good early game pressure. Rage for the double colors does 20 plus 10 for each damage counter on this Pokemon, and that's the theme for its GX attack as well, because for the double colors it does 30 for every damage counter on this thing. If you don't one-shot this guy, he is going to one-shot you back, and that's terrifying. So yeah, it's pretty solid, very good early game pressure, and there are plenty of decks that you can play with this too. So yeah, DC is very, very strong in this set, and this is a good indicator as to why. There is a Herdia that I kind of like in here. I don't think it's very good, but I know in Expanded this would be the sort of one you play, because there was later on there's like Shock Lock as a deck that comes in. Treasure Hunt lets you just get an item out of your discard pile back into the hand when you evolve into the Herdia. Unfortunately, the Stoutland is beyond terrible, so I don't think you actually end up playing this card, but I like the idea of it, so I'll mention it anyway. And then there are two more cards to note. We'll note the better one first. Oranguru is 120 HP, and Psychic, I guess, is actually not a terrible attack because DC is such a thing. Also, beautiful artwork on this too. Mitsuhiro Arita coming in again. Instruct lets you draw until you have 3 cards in hand once per turn. It's much weaker than Octillery, but it's also a basic, and very easy to get into play as a result. So yeah, this is actually super good, and a lot of people will play it because of that. Should be a one-of in a ton of decks, to be honest. Psychic does 60 for triple colorless, plus 20 for each energy on the opponent's active. Not the greatest thing out there, but certainly not the worst either, so we can live with that. And then finally there's Gumshoes. This very stupid looking Pokemon, I've just got to put that out there now. 210 HP, all colorless obviously, because being colorless type. Its ability lets you look at the opponent's hand once per turn. So very strong control tool right off the gate, because you get to see, like you combine this with Team Skullgrunt, and it's like, okay, I see your hand has got a bunch of energy in it, my supporter for turn is now going to be Skullgrunt, so I can remove those energy. Its attack is not amazing, Headbutt Bounce only does 100 for triple colorless, but its GX attack is like okay against certain decks. 1 colorless energy for only 10 damage, but it does 50 more for each energy on the opponent's active Pokemon. There are some decks that need to play a ton of energy on their active, and Gumshoes can hit them for like 160, 210 damage or something, and just get the KO at that point. It's actually not terrible, but you've got to make the tech space for it most of the time, and that's kind of awkward. One last thing I do want to note just before we leave here, we are in the format where we have the evolutions from, I think it's Ancient Origins, that can add types to your Stage 1 Pokemon, and because GXs are actually regular evolutions, stuff like Umbreon and Espeon over here, and Gumshoes for that matter, are compatible with those EVs. And we're now in a format where a lot of the top decks are weak to one of water, fire, or lightning. So there's plenty of potential with some of the cards in this set to actually use like a two-prizer that will change its type as well and hit for additional weaknesses. Very fun stuff. Anyway, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. It's a long video with the stuff here, but this is a big set to go over. Don't expect these to get much shorter as we go forward, because this is just the start of giant sets coming in. So there's a lot to talk about in every one of these going forward. So look forward to that, I suppose. And until next time, take care.